Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Huo Yuhao calmed down as his thoughts stopped there. He would deal with problems as they came. The teachers still didn't know that he had officially become an 8-ring Soul Doluor, so the assessment shouldn't be that difficult with that advantage. After all, the Academy's teachers and even the elders didn't know the full depth of his abilities. He had 5 powerful spirits to support him, so how could he not even pass a graduation assessment? Huo Yuhao felt a lot better after thinking things through. The sky had gradually darkened by this time. Light dotted the shores of the sea god's lake, and Huo Yuhao could see with his spirit eyes that the outer courtyard students had already formed a large circle around the lake. That was especially true for those at the front, as they were squeezed right to the edge of the shore. Male students who are participating in the blind date, get ready, somebody hollered at everyone, and the male students from the inner courtyard, who had already gathered swiftly assembled at the lakeside. Hurry, and go. Don't be late, Wang Yang ordered Huo Yuhao. All right. Teacher Wang, you have to go easy on me tomorrow. You have also taught me, and if I can't pass the graduation assessment, it wouldn't look good on you, would it? Wang Yang laughed and said, nonsense. You're part of the Sea God's pavilion now, and your status is much higher than mine. Furthermore, I have never really taught you anything, so I can't help you. You'll have to rely on yourself. Huo Yuhao no longer had time to continue chatting with Wang Yang, and he vanished and reappeared at the lakeside in a flash. There were so many eyes watching, and even if he was just going through the motions, he had to be a little serious. His mind was filled with tomorrow's graduation test, and he didn't have much energy to think about the sea god's fated blind date. The lake's surface was dark, and it was hard to see anything through the rolling mists. Huo Yuhao arrived by the lakeside and stood behind the throngs of male students. He was still thinking about how he would face the test tomorrow. A large boat sailed in from the distance. The boat was completely lit up. The inner courtyard's teachers and elders were here to observe the ceremony. Elder Xian sat at the front of the boat, hugging that large wine bottle that he hadn't used for a long time. There was a plate of chicken legs beside him, and he appeared as casual as ever. Elder Song, Yang Xiaozhe, Xian Lina, and the other elders, along some of the inner courtyard's teachers, were all on the boat. Cai Maya was the only one who was absent. Dean Cai was still dealing with a certain wretched, newly hired teacher. When he discovered that the student from the inner courtyard, who he had threatened and whose badge he had confiscated, was the youngest member of the Sea God's Pavilion in Shrek Academy's history, he couldn't be any more depressed. He wasn't able to make a display of strength to the inner courtyard's students, and instead, the inner courtyard's students gave him one instead, using Huo Yuhao's prestige. Just like in all the previous years, there were students from the inner courtyard who were participating in the Sea God's fated blind date for the first time, and there were some who had been here before. Those who had participated before knew what was going on, while those who were here for the first time were filled with eager anticipation. Life in the academy, all studying and cultivation, was undoubtedly stale and dry. An activity like this for the young male and female students was a fantastic opportunity to display their abilities, and also a good chance to get a partner. The large boat didn't sail to the shore, instead stopping in the middle of the lake. Beams shot out from the lake's surface, and light rippled through the air as the outer courtyard students, who were here to watch, erupted in cheers and applause. There were 16 beams of light in total, all pale gold. There was a girl in a long white dress standing quietly on top of every beam, and all 16 girls were dressed in the same manner. They wore the same conical bamboo hats as before on their heads, and a white veil 3 feet long draped down and covered their faces completely. Standing in the faint glow of the columns of light, they were just like elegant fairies on the lake's surface. Their transcendent beauty was extremely eye-catching. The light on the lake's surface awakened Huo Yuhao from his contemplation. When he looked up at the fairies on the lake's surface, he was a little dazed, and felt like his hair was standing on end. The emotional changes made his heart beat faster. Yes. Even if he was just here to go through the motions, how could he remain calm when he was once again part of the sea god's fated blind date. Everything was almost identical to back when he had first participated. Back then, one of the girls underneath those conical bamboo hats was his donger. Huo Yuhao felt like he was dreaming as he stared at the scene in front of him, and couldn't control his emotions. The 16 girls were spread out in single file. They were facing the lakeside, just standing there quietly as the male students on the lakeside were eagerly raring to go. The outer courtyard students on the lakesides were probably even more excited than the participating inner courtyard students, and each cheer and applause was louder than the last. Right at this moment, 2 slightly stronger beams of white light shot into the air, and 2 more figures appeared. They were both incredibly beautiful. The one on the left was clad in a flowing white dress, Han Ruoruo. She had managed to get a change of clothes and even put on some makeup during this time, and was like a snow lotus blooming on the icy mountains as white light shone down on her. Huo Yuhao's eldest senior sister, Zhong Lishuan, was naturally to her right. Just like back when he had first participated in the sea god's fated blind date, Zhong Lishuan was in a long yellow dress, like a blooming tulip unrivaled in beauty. The outer courtyard students cheered even more vigorously when the 2 gorgeous women appeared. The shore of Sea God's Island was a bit further away, but they were still clearly audible. Love was the topic of eternity, and something that youths both male and female yearned for the most. The outer courtyard students were still young, and the academy had been very strict on them. Their longings were very satisfied even if they could only watch this event. This was the first time that the sea god's fated blind date had been opened for the outer courtyard to watch. Han Ruoruo raised her voice and began to speak. The meeting of fate upon the sea god's lake. Love is found in but a moment, as Shrek lives on for 100 centuries. Welcome, everyone, to this beautiful evening by the sea god's lake. The annual sea god's fated blind date is about to begin. I am tonight's host, and I am representing myself and my eldest senior sister to wish good luck to all students from the inner courtyard who are participating, that they might find the love that they want and deserve. At the same time, welcome to all elders from the Sea God's Pavilion and teachers who are here to watch. I speak on behalf of the students to express our sincere gratitude to our teachers. Without your patient nurturing and support, we would not have achieved what we have today. To our juniors from the outer courtyard, if you wish to obtain a love that the Academy approves of, and to confess to the person that you love, then you have to work hard and cultivate, and try to become part of the inner courtyard one day. Cheers and applause erupted once more. The students from the outer courtyard, especially the male students, seemed like they were on stimulants. If not for the fact that they had to watch the sea god's fated blind date, the beautiful Han Ruoruo's words was enough to make them forget about how tired they were from their continuous cultivating, and they couldn't wait to go back and continue. Yang Xiaozhe was sitting in the large boat. He smiled and said, "Seems like the decision to let the little fellows from the outer courtyard watch was an extremely correct one. When the sea god's fated blind date is over, I can guarantee that they will have a cultivation climax. The event has just begun. I'm sure the effects will be even better later on." Xian Lina grunted coldly as she muttered under her breath, "Sleazy." There was nothing Yang Xiaozhe could do against her quip. He could only stop talking as he shook his head helplessly. Zhong Lishuan continued the speech. Her voice traveled far and wide as she said, "Now, let us invite all the male students who are participating in the blind date to prepare themselves. 36 pillars will appear on the lake's surface after this, and the students closest to our sea god's fairies will proceed to the first round. The students at the back are not likely to receive a suitable placing in the first round. So, pay attention, everyone. No matter what methods you use, as long as you land on the leaves of the water lilies where the pillars of light are, you will have taken that spot. Do not fall into the water, as that will strip you of your right to continue in the sea god's fated blind date. Get ready, everyone. 3, 2, 1, begin." 36 pillars of light suddenly shot out from underneath the lake's surface. These pillars were neatly separated into 3 rows, every row about 5 meters apart from each other, and distributed equally about 100 meters away from the female students, roughly 200 meters away from the shore. The students from the inner courtyard immediately made their moves once Zhong Lishuan finished speaking, like bolts of lightning as they swiftly pounced towards those pillars of light. They all wanted to gain the upper hand and display their abilities, as it was the best way to gain the heart of the girls that they liked. Huo Yuhao was the only one who didn't immediately move. Everything before him was just like how he and Donga had fixed their relationship. Although the people were different, everything in front of him seemed identical. The male students had already soared into the air as they rushed towards those pillars, and Huo Yuhao slowly drifted out from the lakeside. He didn't display any of his abilities as he followed behind, and was last as he landed on a water lily. However, he didn't release his martial soul at all, and he even used imitation to change his white clothes to red. He didn't want to become the center of attention, as he was just going through the motions anyway. All he had to do was to maintain a low profile. All the students were in place. The students who had obtained positions in the first row were all overjoyed and smiled happily. Everything was difficult in the beginning, and they had a big advantage, because they had finished the first step properly. They were the only ones who had this row, and that meant they could be seen directly by the young women. The sea god's fated blind date wasn't just a chance to confess, it was also a chance to display their strength and abilities. Who didn't want the academy to notice and pay attention to them? Zhong Lishuan said, the sea god's fated blind date on the sea god's lake. Tonight, we're going to hold our annual sea god's fated blind date again. I believe everyone has been waiting for a long time. The blind date will be divided into 5 segments. Everyone, be prepared. Let me emphasize once more, once you drop into the water, you'll be out no matter whether you're a guy or a girl. We'll also choose the most beautiful sea god's fairy and the luckiest guy. However, what you need to do is to first unveil the sea god's fairies. This is also the first step the male students have to take to demonstrate their abilities. Han Ruoruo continued after this, that's right. In that case, let's begin our first segment, mutual feelings. We'll begin from the left side of the first row. Every male student can do their best to demonstrate their abilities, and try to remove the bamboo hat on a female student's head. However, you better not go overboard with your actions. Otherwise, the female students might not be polite and retaliate. I can only pretend that I didn't see anything if that happens. In addition, don't fall into the water, just like eldest senior sister mentioned. First male student, you can begin. The moment Han Ruoruo stopped talking, the first male student drifted up. His 7 soul rings shone brightly. Obviously, he was a soul sage from the inner courtyard. He flew into the air without aid and proceeded in the direction of the veiled young women. Huo Yuhao had regained his focus by now. As he saw the flying male student, he nodded in approval. The abilities of inner courtyard students are still as strong as ever. This male student seems to be slightly bigger than me. I think he's an agility type soul master. He's really quick. No wonder he was able to snatch first place. 100 meters was a short distance to cover for a soul sage. This young man had evidently been to past fated blind dates before. Just as he was about to reach the veiled girls, he lifted both his hands abruptly, and a gust of strong wind generated from his soul power instantly swept diagonally upward. At the same time, this gust of wind was blowing the dresses and bamboo hats off of the female students. This was a cunning move. What would the young women choose when their dresses and bamboo hats were being blown up at the same time? Exclamations could be heard. Some of the less experienced female students instantly pressed down their dresses and forgot to use their own soul skills. Their bamboo hats were immediately blown off their heads. There were 16 of them in total. In just a matter of seconds, half of the female students' bamboo hats were already blown off, and their actual appearances were revealed. Sorry, juniors and seniors, the young man laughed. There was even a perverted look in his eyes. He turned around in the air and didn't even try to remove the bamboo hats of the remaining girls, just making ready to leave. Pervert, someone shouted angrily. Among the female students, one of them in a relatively central position suddenly lifted her hand in his direction. It didn't seem like she had used a soul skill. She only punched her fist out, and a low-pitched dragon's roar arose. A golden ball of energy shaped like a fist was unleashed towards the sly male student. Her bamboo hat hadn't been removed. The male student was delighted right now. The ball of energy was about to strike him, but he wasn't too bothered, because the aura of that female student wasn't very strong. He used both his hands to resist it and almost wanted to rely on its momentum to send the strike back. However, he immediately sensed something amiss when his palms touched the ball of energy. There was an extremely fierce and domineering undulation of soul power within that ball of energy. It immediately blew apart when he touched it. Even though he used a defensive soul skill to protect himself, he was still flung away from the explosion. His protective soul skill was destroyed, and he crashed towards the water surface free fall. However, he was an inner courtyard disciple, after all. He took a deep breath and stabilized the surging energy in his body. A pair of silver wings instantly opened up on his back. He fluttered them gently before he managed to rapidly return and land gently on a lotus leaf. The outer courtyard disciples cheered from the shore for this inner courtyard senior's magnificent performance. However, they didn't know that he had already broken out in a cold sweat. The energy in his body was surging madly. He kept on summoning his soul power to dispel the dominant and invasive soul power that he was subjected to earlier. Who is she? She's strong. I'm afraid she's not just a soul sage. It's very possible that she's a soul doluor. My God. There's even a soul doluor among the female students. Does that mean that we're going to be greatly restrained? The sea god's fated blind date wasn't just a blind date. To some extent, it was a healthy competition between the male and female students. This soul sage believed that he was one of the stronger male students in attendance today. However, he was immediately disadvantaged when he was attacked. There was no doubt that he was feeling demoralized. Huo Yuhao revealed a doubtful look as he stood in last place on the third row. The young woman's voice that he had heard earlier sounded very familiar. However, he didn't manage to catch it too clearly, as she had spoken very briefly. Han Ruoruo laughed. Female student 8, you can't attack the male students directly unless the other party has invaded the cylindrical region where you are standing. However, we'll make an exception, since male student 1 was indeed a little overboard. There'll not be any further exceptions. After hearing her words, the young men heaved a sigh of relief. The ladies were too fierce. If all of them attacked at the same time, wouldn't that mean that anyone who approached them would end up in the water? Zhong Lishuan said, all right, male student 2, it's your turn. Be gentlemanly. Learning from the lesson of the first male student, the second male student was a little hesitant. The female students were all prepared this time. He returned without making any progress. None of the female students were unveiled by him. There were 16 female students in total. At the very start, 8 of them had already lost their bamboo hats. This was truly very rare in the sea god's fated blind date. However, all the male students after the first one would find it difficult to achieve anything similarly impressive. The female students, who were able to keep their hats on after the first round, were not weak in ability or focus. The 36 male students took their turns one by one. It was only after some time that another bamboo hat was removed. Huo Yuhao was the last, just observing the performances of the male students in front of him. There were 3 soul sages among the male students, the rest either soul emperors or soul kings. This was already very impressive. However, the problem of the stronger female students in Shrek's inner courtyard remained. Apart from female student 8, at least 4 other female students were already soul sages. All of them were pretty strong. As a result, when it was Huo Yuhao's turn, there were still 4 female students with bamboo hats left. I've been looking for you for half a day. Yuhao, why are you at the back? The more you cultivate, the further back you go. We have 4 bamboo hats that have not been removed. It's your turn now. Zhong Lishuan called out to Huo Yuhao. When she did, Elder Xian and the rest immediately turned their attention to Huo Yuhao from their boat. Huo Yuhao laughed bitterly in his heart. Eldest senior sister, didn't you say that I could just come for show? Why did you call my name? However, even though he had that mindset, he still had to properly show his face since he was here. He really didn't want to be disqualified by falling into the water. It was his graduation test tomorrow. Wang Yang had also reminded him that he didn't want to offend Zhong Lishuan right now. Huo Yuhao stepped off of his lotus leaf. Yes, he walked slowly towards the female students. He didn't appear as dazzling or impressive as the students before him. His soul rings didn't even shine. He just walked over calmly. Zhong Lishuan was a little amused as she muttered to herself, "This fellow is really only coming here just to show his face." On the shore, the outer courtyard students were confused when they saw this last inner courtyard senior. Look at this. How is this senior able to walk so freely on the lake's surface? What kind of ability is that? I believe he should be a soul sage, and he's deliberately controlling his altitude. However, how is he able to do it so easily? No, that's not it. This senior's abilities are ice type. He can freeze a layer of ice below him as he walks. This is why he finds it so easy. He wouldn't find it so easy if he were flying. The person speaking was Jin Shou, who Huo Yuhao had met earlier. Him being able to say that wasn't because his vision was very clear. Given the lighting and distance, how could he possibly see everything clearly? He had deliberately observed Huo Yuhao as he went to the island earlier. Just as the outer courtyard students were all engaged in discussion, Huo Yuhao arrived in front of the veiled women. Initially, he had planned to make one pass around these female students before returning. However, Zhong Lishuan was watching him intently. If he really did nothing, she probably wouldn't let him off. As he thought about it, he mysteriously arrived in front of female student 8, who he had found familiar earlier on. He reached out for her bamboo hat. Yes, he just reached out. He wasn't quick at all. There was no difference between his speed and that of an ordinary person. To Huo Yuhao, given the ability that this female student demonstrated earlier, she would be able to easily block him. After that, he could just return to where he had been standing. However, he was astonished to discover that she had no intention of protecting her bamboo hat. She let Huo Yuhao grab the edge of it without moving. Huo Yuhao had no chance of retracting his hand now. Could he just not take her hat off? That would be utter disrespect for both her and the sea god's fated blind date. What was going to happen to him? As he had no choice, he could only take the hat off. To avoid a scenario where the female student had forgotten to stop him, he purposely slowed down. If she resisted even a little, he would immediately let go and put the hat back. However, things didn't go as he wished. From start to finish, she had no intention of laying her hands on him. She let him take off her hat and reveal her true appearance. There was a long veil below the hat. Huo Yuhao only shifted the veil away after he lifted it up over the top of her face. It was only then that he saw her appearance. His hand went stiff. Initially, he appeared very helpless. However, he was fixated on the girl right now. Even the ice under his feet started to crack, and seemed like it would buckle at any time. In front of him was a cheeky-looking face. The girl looked like a fairy that had descended onto the mortal world, illuminated by the beam of golden light, and accentuated by her long, white dress. Her pinkish-blue hair flowed out behind her. There were complex undulations in her flawless eyes. Her exquisite, porcelain-like face reflected a golden glow. Every part of her was perfect, so perfect that she left those watching breathless. At this instant, all the sea god fairies around her paled in comparison. It was like the beam of golden light reflecting off her face was the only thing shining so brightly. Not far away, the other young men, who had joined the fated blind date, were all stunned. At this moment, they couldn't be bothered looking at anyone else. In their eyes, there was only this sea god's fairy. Huo Yuhao's hand was trembling as he held the bamboo hat. His eyes revealed strong emotions surging through him. "Dorma," he exclaimed unwittingly, and the ice under him quickly froze up even more. This spread, and all the sea god's fairies suddenly felt the surface beneath them harden. They no longer needed to worry about their lotus leaves flipping over. Huo Yuhao's breathing had quickened. His lips were trembling too. Ever since he had come to this fated blind date, he had begun to yearn for Wang Dong more and more. Right now, he felt as if he had returned to many years ago, after seeing this girl who looked identical to Wang Dong. He had returned to that beautiful and unforgettable night. Dong, my Dong, are you back? He threw the bamboo hat away, and couldn't believe his eyes. Right now, his mind was in turmoil. He didn't even know what to do. I'm Tang Wutong. She sounded both cold and emotional at the same time, and brought the overly excited Huo Yuhao back to earth with her words. Tang Wutong. Yes. She's Tang Wutong. Huo Yuhao was as stunned as if cold water had been poured on him. When he saw that familiar face and curly hair, it dawned on him that she was Tang Wutong. Yes. She's Tang Wutong. Dong has straight hair. Only Chioa and the goddess of light in my heart have curly hair. She's Tang Wutong. She's not Dong. Tang Wutong just stared at Huo Yuhao, and saw how he turned from being extremely delighted to disappointed. He seemed to have lost his soul in his heartache. But, I'm Tang Wutong. I'm really not Wang Dong, or Wang Chioa. I'm Tang Wutong. Huo Yuhao had been through a lot in his life. After a brief moment of emotional turmoil, he still managed to clear his mind eventually. He mopped himself and nodded at Tang Wutong. After that, he fled without another word. He quickly returned to his place in the last row. He didn't even try to talk to her. When they saw this, the male students in the inner courtyard were all astonished. An absolute beauty, who had let him take off her bamboo hat. What did that mean? This meant she was interested in him. However, he didn't even say anything, and left just like that. Wow, so beautiful, so beautiful. Those from the outer courtyard could see what was going on using telescopic soul tools. Tang Wutong immediately became the focus of everyone's attention. Yes, she was too beautiful. No matter who it was, she was the focus of all attention. Han Ruoruo and Zhong Lishuan looked at one another, and Zhong Lishuan nodded at Han Ruoruo. It's the second segment next. Han Ruoruo said loudly. After the first segment, it's time for the female students to express who they are interested in. The second segment is called Love at First Sight. The rules are very simple. Every female student has a button to control the soul lamp below her. They can light their lamps for every male student. As long as they keep a lamp on for a male student, that male student can remain for the next segment. However, those who don't make it will have to leave. Before the second segment starts, we'll arrange the male students in terms of the number of bamboo hats they removed earlier. Among the 5 segments of the Sea God's fated blind date, the second segment took the least amount of time. However, it was a major test for the male students. They would be eliminated, no matter how strong or outstanding, if no female student left her light on for them. After all, there were many more male students than female students. As a result, this segment was used as a means of simplifying the process of the fated blind date. Huo Yuhao was originally in the last row, and wanted to remain there. However, since he had taken off Tang Wutong's bamboo hat and there were only 8 people who managed to do the same, he was in the first row now. The first soul sage, who had taken off 8 bamboo hats, was to his right in the first row. All sea gods fairies, please consider your options carefully. You will be given 1 minute. You must think carefully. Furthermore, let me emphasize that if you don't leave a light on for any of the male students, it will mean that you are giving up on this event. The female students each had their own plans. They were all separated, and seemed very quiet now. No one knew who they were interested in. A minute passed very quickly. At Zhong Lishuan's signal, Han Ruoruo continued to MC. All right, our second segment is about to begin. First, all sea gods fairies, please leave your lights on for the male students. In this second segment, it doesn't mean that you are choosing someone if you leave your light on for him. You can give him a chance if you have a good impression of him. At the same time, you are giving yourself a chance. I'm sure the other party will take note of you if you leave a light on for him. The first to face the test was the Soul Sage, who had taken off 8 bamboo hats earlier. 3, 2, 1. Please light your lamps for the first male student. Almost instantly, half of the lamps were extinguished. After this, a few other lamps were extinguished. The first male student's heart was in his throat now. No matter how strong he was, he had to leave this stage if no female students chose him. Right now, he regretted going overboard earlier. His impression among the female students had fallen dramatically after female student 8 called him perverted. Fortunately, he was a soul sage, which still made him attractive. Furthermore, they were all inner courtyard disciples. At the very least, they were still acquainted with him. Finally, 5 lamps remained lit. He was fortunately not eliminated. The rest of the male students started to get nervous after seeing that the first of them being dealt such a huge blow right from the start. God knew what the female students were thinking. There were too many young men. There were 16 female students, but 36 male students. The ladies in the inner courtyard were very popular. A nervous atmosphere quickly clouded the entire lake. However, the male students in the first row performed well in the first round. They were the strongest of the young men. As for the next few young men who stepped up, more than half the female students kept their lights on for each of them. The second segment carried on very quickly. Although Huo Yuhao was in a rather backward position in the first row, it was soon his turn. Next, let's leave our lamps on for the male student in the 8th position. 3, 2, 1, begin. Huo Yuhao was still in a bit of a daze. He had mistaken Tang Wutong for Wang Donga, which was a huge blow to him. His yearning for Wang Donga was at its greatest right now, leaving him feeling very weak. He only wanted to quickly leave this place and return to his quarters, and just hope that all the lights would be extinguished. That way, he could just directly leave. However, things didn't go as planned. None of the 16 lamps were extinguished. They were all left lit for him. Not to mention Huo Yuhao himself, even Zhong Lishuan and Han Ruoruo were astonished. It was important to note that Huo Yuhao didn't perform too impressively earlier, even though he had taken Tang Wutong's bamboo hat off. Instead, he was the least eye-catching. Why did the ladies leave their lamps on for him? What was going on? This video will end here.